Hey there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and I want to start today's podcast with a little bit of a story. So I loved my first visit to Reis Bakery so much that about a week later, I went in and got just an assortment of pastries and desserts and brought them into the office, to share with people. And my boss, his parents actually live in France right now. And he had just come back from a trip to France. And, he's kind of like, I've had French pastries. Like, I just had these. Like, are these going to compare? And he bit into the croissant, and his eyes got wide, and he didn't say anything for about 3 seconds. And he was like, that is as close as I've ever had to a French pastry not being in France. Wow. Now, I've never been to France, so I can't speak on this intelligently, but all I can say is I know that I love them, and I had to talk to the owners today. I have Aires and Judy Reis here in the studio. Guys, thank you so much for joining the show.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
So Reis Bakery is still fairly new. As we're going to talk about, you guys are getting a lot of notoriety very quickly.
Wow.
But if someone is listening to this and they haven't heard of Reis's or they haven't been able to stop in yet, how would you describe your bakery to somebody who's hearing about it for the first time?
Well, we are not a French bakery. We are an international bakery, actually. We have French pastries, of course. We have French bread as well, but we also do some other European-style breads and pastries, so more international flavor, no pun intended, but yeah.
So, yeah, that's basically it. We found things that we just loved when we were in Europe, and by the magic of passion and deep study and much practice and lots of test kitchen, I just actually recreated a lot of it, so we were able to enjoy it here stateside.
Yeah.
So it's a nice thing. Good for me, anyway.
So I want to get into that because I think you guys have a really fascinating story. First off, if anyone's listening to this and at any point in this conversation is just like, man, I got to check this out. Reis Bakery is located just off 120th and Pacific. It's in the old Cupcake Island space, if you're familiar with that. So now you know where to go to get these pastries. But you just mentioned it, Judy, like from what I can tell in my research, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys are not professionally trained bakers. This was basically a trip and a passion and a love was discovered. Kind of just real quick, what's the origin story behind this?
We love food. We love good food.
I love food too, and I'm not starting a bakery with incredible pastries and desserts.
Well, you may find this hard to believe, but I don't have a sweet tooth. I'm not a sweets fan. I like flavorful food.
Right.
So the less sugar, the better. But if it's, I love fruit. So if it's got that fruity flavor to it, like the Queen Amman. The Queen Amman is loaded with sugar, but it's also loaded with flavor. So we were living in Luxembourg, working for NATO at the time, and fell in love with the pastries. Just the desserts are so flavorful, packed with good stuff, creams and fruits and plated desserts that are to die for. And, I started dabbling, trying this, trying that, and brought it back stateside, and just it grew from there.
So what does dabbling look like? Like now that would mean getting on YouTube and watching a bunch of videos, but I don't know if that was the case. I don't even know if that was available when you started doing this. Like, how do you dabble in something so technical?
Trial and error.
Okay.
I attended a bunch of classes when we lived in Luxembourg and in France and Germany and in Luxembourg proper. I'm a voracious reader, read tons of books by various chefs and pastry experts, and just tried to see what worked for me and what didn't work, and what I liked, what my family liked, which is all the more important. And that's it. So
now, as I was preparing for this, I was really trying to get to the essence of what makes your pastries different, because like croissants and some of the things you offer, you find those around town, but I bite into yours and it's different. And the word that I kept encountering, I think what I came back to, and obviously there's a lot of technique involved, and I think technique is a huge part of it, but the word that was just on your website over and over and over again was ingredients. It's the quality of the ingredients. Talk to me about that.
Well, not so much the quality. Yes, you're absolutely right. But it's also, okay, to make a French croissant or a French baguette, you try to do it here in the States, and we have excellent flour here in the States, but you can't replicate the French feel and taste without using all of the right ingredients, not all of the right ingredients, but the original ingredients. You have a French pastry, you can't make it with Australian flour. You have to use French flour, French butter. So yeah, that's the difference. We use our French pastries, French flour, French butter, organic milk, as opposed to water and milk powder, to give it that milky taste. We like the taste of milk proper. So that's the difference.
What's the difference between French flour and flour that you would get here, or French butter and American butter?
Well, I was afraid you were going to ask me that question.
Okay.
We'll start with the butter.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, it's okay.
You're not Bill Nye.
French butter, by law, must be 82% butter fat. And you'll probably say, oh, butter fat. Well, butter fat in butter lends to the creamy taste of butter. So here in the States, it's anywhere between, depending on the brand, anywhere between 77 and 80. There are some brands, some Vermont Creamery, who go up to 82, 84%. So starting with the butter, every butter has to be at that level of butter fat. And then in the croissants, specifically, there's another type of butter, which is 84%. And that's the butter that you use to actually laminate. So the difference between the butters, as you increase in the butter fat content, the temperature, the melting point of the butter increases. So 82%, it melts slower than an American 80% butter fat butter. So that's the butter. Okay. The flour.
I'm loving this. We're getting a little science.
Yeah, gosh. Okay. So the flour comes from wheat, right? And the U.S. does export a great deal of wheat to Europe and elsewhere throughout the world. The flour is processed differently. There's a different ash content, and we're not going to get into percentages of ash content, but there is a noticeable difference when you produce something with French flour and U.S. flour in the palatability of the product itself. You can have the exact same ingredient, same weights and measures, and you will have two different results. So much so that here in the U.S. you can get French-style flour, which is a mixture of different flours to replicate that texture and final end product that you'd get using French flour. Here ended the lesson.
We all just got that much smarter. I feel much better about myself now. So thanks.
So, yes, sir.
You were prepared. You were ready for that.
Well,
or maybe you get that question often.
No, know. Actually, it's all this useless knowledge I have here in the back.
You needed it for Adobe Podcast. There you go. Now you have it.
Yes, sir.
So I want to tease some taste buds here before we fully dive into your story. For people listening to this, yes, they know what a croissant is. They might know what a pain au chocolat is, like things like that. But I want to kind of introduce some of the other items on your menu to really kind of get their salivary glands activated and be like, okay, I got to go check this out. So you mentioned it earlier, but we need more discussion on the Queen Amman because I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen it anywhere else. And I remember the first time I came in, Judy, you offered me like a sample of it. And I was like, man, I don't know what the heck this is. And that was my first bite of Reis Bakery. And I was just like, whoa, okay. Like, I'm here for this. What is a Queen Amman, and like, why is it so good?
Wow. Okay, Queen Amman is French origin. Normandy is the area. So what is it? It's laminated dough, and what laminated dough is dough with butter in the center, and then you run it through a sheeter or a laminator, and you roll it out, and then it's OD'd on sugar. There's no sugar in the dough itself. It's a salty dough, actually. So then when you get to folding, it gets just like a lot of sugar and a lot of butter. The cups, I am, yeah, I'm a little, what's the right word for it? I'm a little overzealous when people are buttering the Queen Amman pans, and then I tell them, you're not putting enough butter. And when I say you're not putting enough butter is if you think there's a lot of butter, that's not enough.
Yeah.
You got to put a lot. And then it gets sugar, and the laminated dough is rolled out and cut and folded, and it gets more sugar, and it gets an egg wash, which then gets some more sugar on top of that. And then it's baked, and it just, all of that sugar and butter caramelizes, and it's pretty amazing.
It's wonderful. And I mean, yeah, butter and sugar taste fantastic together, so it's not a surprise. But what I really love about you guys' social media is you have gone through and made videos like showing the creation process. Like, there was, I think it was like 1 minute and 20 seconds a video of you making the Queen Amman, and it's sped up like 4 or 5 times speed, so I can't even imagine how long this really took. But I got tired just like watching it. I mean, there are so many steps and layers that go into this. I was blown away. So yeah, it might sound simple, just, a lot of sugar and a lot of butter, but no, obviously it's not that at all. There's a lot of love that goes into this thing.
It's a lengthy process, and people asked on this past Saturday, we just had like a major sellout. It was quite fun, actually, and just greeting everyone at once, so many people. But and they were asking, will there be more Queen Amman coming out then later on? When we said 11:30, we'll have another round. And, I tried to explain that that's a lengthy process. We can't just create Queen Amman. It takes time to make that. And so, people might look at this small little tartlet-looking thing and think, what's the big deal, about this? But it's just how everything just comes together. All the parts of it just come together and give you the flavor that just melts in your mouth. And I've had people walk away somewhat dubious. All right, I'll try one of that, and come back the next day or even the same day and say, wow, I need more of those. It's marvelous. The caramelization, just what happens with the dough, with all the layers, with the process. It's a lengthy process, but it's worth it.
But yeah, the payoff, definitely worth it. Next item I got to ask you about is the Liège waffle. Because this is like my newest obsession, whether it's a late night snack, midday snack, breakfast, I don't care. Like, I eat these things like a junkie. But I'm curious because, for a bakery that offers bread and pastries and desserts, I feel like, I guess I don't really even know what bucket that the Liège waffle falls into, but I don't know if it's any of those. What made you say this is something that we need to serve at our bakery?
My grandchildren love it. Love them.
Oh, so,
as the
everybody
family. I don't eat them. They're
because you don't like the sugar.
They're too sweet for my taste.
That's
but
fair.
I don't have to eat them. I do have to like them. I like just the waffle. So yeah, it's.
So yeah, it's a Belgian treat. You can buy them on the street. You can buy them anywhere in Belgium. And it's like you pick it up with your coffee. You can buy it at a street vendor. So it's, that's one of the little pockets of Belgium that we represent in the shop. And, doesn't need syrup, doesn't need anything else.
No.
It's got a little light caramelization over the top of it and the Belgian pearl sugar inside that adds the crunch to it, the crystallized on the inside. So it's just a nice put it in your pocket treat.
It doesn't go in my pocket. It just goes straight into my gullet.
I'm going to give you a little piece of useless knowledge on the...
Oh, here we go.
Belgian pearl sugar. What is it made of? From, I should say.
Well,
Take a guess.
You're giving me a piece of knowledge. You didn't say you were going to quiz me.
Well, you ask me questions, I get to ask you questions.
Oh, fair enough. I have no answer. I could try and Google it real quick before you give me. I have no idea.
No idea? It's actually made from beets.
Really?
Yes, sir.
I love beets. And they do have a nice natural sweetness.
Yes, sir.
So it's healthy then, right? Because it comes from a root vegetable.
Oh, well, as long as I don't eat half a dozen a lot of the time, yeah.
You know what? By the way, I just wanted to correct one thing. You said Normandy, it's Brittany region.
Sorry.
That's the Queen Amman originated in the Brittany region of France.
Oh, okay.
Right. Not Normandy.
No worries.
I stand corrected.
Last food item that I got to ask you guys about is the Provosata loaf, excuse me.
Yeah.
Because I Googled this and I didn't get like any other results on this thing. So it's a loaf of bread that has sopressata and provolone cheese baked into it. So it's just like the ultimate savory, meaty, salty, just amazing loaf of carbs. It's tremendous, but I didn't see it anywhere else. So I was curious, is this a family specialty or where did it come from?
Okay, so can I name the bakery from where it originated?
Of course.
Okay, so this actually comes from our childhood neighborhood back in Brooklyn, New York. Mazzola's Bakery used to sell, or they still sell, it used to be called lard bread. Now, there's no lard in it, but it is packed with the salami, the cheese, and the pepper. And we would go there and buy them. You have to buy two at a time, because if you only need one, the other one will never make it home because it gets eaten on the car ride home. So absolutely adore the bread. So I decided, well, let me try my hand at baking lard bread. They changed the name actually from lard bread to prosciutto bread because that's a little more trendy. And people hear lard and they say, oh, no, we don't want any of that. So we named it prosciutto bread after working provosata, after working on the recipe and getting it down right. My neighbors back in Brooklyn, they were like, we love this because they were my taste testers. I would make stuff at the house and then take it over there. How does this taste? How does that taste? What's the texture like in the whole 9 yards? So that's the origin and the history of the provosata.
Oh, it's a must. So, I mean, we've kind of covered the spectrum: sweet, savory, breads. You guys also have desserts. You've got a lot more in the shop, but I wanted to at least call out a couple different menu items. But now I want to get more into the backstory, and I want to go back. How did you guys meet? How did you guys get together? I think Iris said you've been married for more than 40 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So take me back.
Wow. Let me step into this one. So we lived in the same neighborhood, but on opposite sides of the track. So I was in the less favorable section of the neighborhood, which I didn't know because that was all I knew was that side. His side of the track was very different. We were separated by the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel was between our two parts of the neighborhood. In any event, we met through a mutual friend. And initially I did not like him. I thought, I don't know if I like this guy. So yeah, after some going bowling with some friends and having a couple of outings, we hit it off and we married not long after that. And he was in the Navy at the time. And so I married into the Navy and left the neighborhood, and we have traveled. We've been globetrotting. I've just, of course, I support his career throughout his career in the U.S. Navy, And then we finally ended up in the corporate world. We had 3 girls in the midst of that, 3 daughters. One lives here in Omaha. And then we have one that's serving currently in the U.S. Air Force and one who is in the Pacific Northwest. She's recently married. So, yeah, we just hit it off, and we continued to travel around wherever the Navy sent us and made a lot of discoveries food-wise and otherwise. So, yeah, we lived where we lived. We lived in Iceland, Portugal.
Iceland? How much?
Italy.
Luxembourg.
That came later. But, yeah, so we've been together 41, it's going to be 42 years.
Well, thank you very much for your service. Was food always a connector in your relationship, or is that something that developed later on?
Well, she cooks just like my mother, so
that's never a bad thing.
That's a great compliment to me.
She cooks like my mom, so I have absolutely no complaints. But we have always been a lover of foods. I grew up. I was born in Brazil, raised in New York. And my mother would cook. She would work and come home and cook every night. And we just love food. We love good quality food. So yeah, and I love the fact that in Omaha there are more eateries. You can go for an entire year and never have to eat at the same place twice. It's great.
Good food.
It's fantastic.
Don't I know it, man? I cannot keep up with this food scene. Like, my list of places that I need to try gets longer, way faster than it gets shorter. It's insane.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious, because you just said you've lived in all these different countries. You've been globetrotting.
Mm-hmm.
But it was Luxembourg, where about 15 years ago, where you really kind of caught the bug and you were like, I need to try this myself. What was it about that location and what you were experiencing there that moved you past, I love this, to, ooh, I love this so much, I need to figure out how to make it myself?
Okay, fair question. Well, we had lived in between 1997 and 2007. We were stateside. And I'm really, as I mentioned, I don't eat sweets. Typically, the desserts have to be, if I eat a piece of cake, I have to scrape the icing off. I just eat the sponge in the center. So we went to Luxembourg, and it was like, oh my gosh, I can eat all of this stuff, or here is all of this stuff that's available, and it's not overly sweet. Like, people love cannolis, and cannolis are great, but they're just, for me, I find them overly sweet. But in Europe, it's totally different. There isn't that overloaded sugary flavor. It's naturally flavored. The creams are more natural. It's got vanilla, and it just, there are so many different flavors and so much I want to introduce you guys to, so that you can experience the same thing, and you're getting a taste of it, no pun intended, by what we were putting out there right now. So we went to Luxembourg and found all of these wonderful treats, and came back to the U.S. and were like, where are they at? So I decided we're going to bring them back with us when we go home. So knowing what we would find back in the States, that it's not about the quality. The quality's always been there. I grew up in an Italian neighborhood, and Italian bakeries all over God's creation, serving wonderful pastries and desserts. A little too sweet for the most part for my taste, but I wanted to bring back the flavor and the joy that I get from eating all of that flavorful stuff.
Now, you mentioned there's a lot of trial and error, and there was some taking of classes, but like, how else do you figure this? Like, the Queen Amman, that's something that you're just not. Maybe there was some of them in Brooklyn and someone could teach you, but I don't even know where I would start trying to figure out, how do I make this? Like, how did you teach yourself to make these things?
Well, you learn the basic principles. You read for forever. You know, the DDT in the bread breaking world is not a poison that you spray on. It's not an insecticide. DDT is desired dough temperature. So you read volumes of books and because not every book has all the information in it, right? So you have to read a whole series of them by different authors and just pick out bits and pieces and practice. I can tell you, rolling dough, making laminated dough, croissants, pain au chocolat, in a home kitchen really stinks. It is the most arduous task to roll out, and I'm talking about very small portions. I can only do 10 at a time in the home kitchen because it's labor intensive. It takes days, not hours, to make it happen. And so, yeah, you just keep practicing. And then when you get into a shop, if you want to get into a shop where you have these machines that are purpose built, you know, for that process, and turn what takes 6 hours into 20 minutes, I'm all about that. So it's great.
We'll get into that. We'll get into your baking at home and then eventually moving into the shop. But what do you remember of your first bakes? Because this is stuff that takes experience. Like, I'm guessing you're not nailing it the first time.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. There's ripped dough, there's overheated dough, there's burnt dough, there's just disaster after disaster. And you learn, you know, as the saying goes, you learn from your mistakes, and you try not to do something one way, you try to do it another way. A lot of trial and error until you get, you know, I have more tools, more gadgets than you could shake a stick at, and you find what works. You know, you can't afford to buy this big Jagunda machine. Well, you buy the little one. Or, even better yet, you make something on your own, like a proofer. I took a styrofoam cabinet. I put in a plant heater, you know, that comes in a roll to heat the plant. Put a plant heater in there on the bottom and on the back wall. Put a couple of fans for electronics. And that's my proofing box. So, because you need to get the temperature just right, or things just don't happen the way they're supposed to. So it's trial and error and making it work. So I've tasted perfection, so I know what I strive for, and I'm getting there.
I think you're doing a great job, babe.
Well, we do try. Thank you.
So Judy, as this passion is developing, and he's just in the kitchen and he's trying out all these recipes, and it's trial and error. Are you just like, this is awesome because I'm getting to try all these different pastries, or is it like, is Iris having a midlife crisis? What's going on here? What was your mindset like during this time?
Well, I saw he had a passion for this, and he was going to go for it and make it work and figure out what went wrong. There was a lopsided Black Forest cake that he was so displeased, and I'm trying it, and I'm like, are you kidding? This is great. Who cares what it looks like, you know? But he cares. He wants it to look a certain way. And, you know, for me, I gave over the kitchen, basically, because it now became a bakery. And I said, well, I can do what I do. I'm in administration, so let me do the administrative side. And I'd go into our home office and started creating order forms. And my daughter helped us to put together you know, the website and the Facebook page and all sorts of things, and online ordering. And that's how we started. So it was just to support him. It wasn't in our plan. I mean, we only just moved to Omaha a year and a couple of days or something like that. And so it wasn't in our plan at all. We thought, all right, well, we get here in July. Let's look for a place. We'll buy a house. We'll just kind of play out the rest of the year, settle in, get with the grands and the kids, and then we'll start looking for work after the first of the year. Well,
it didn't work out that way, did it?
Yeah, no. So our daughter just put it out there to her network on one of her network pages on Facebook and said, hey, my parents just moved here, and my dad makes a lot of European pastries. If anybody's looking for anything, you know, because kids have been telling him, you got to sell this stuff. You have to open a business. You should open a shop, Dad. And so she put it out there. We couldn't figure out what was going on. Like people started sending messages and ordering things, and there it began, and it just never stopped.
So what was your initial thought when you've got family members and people that you know coming to you and saying you should open a shop? Are you immediately just like throwing a wall up and you're like, hey, no, I'm not ready for that, or that's not what this is about? Or were you receptive to it? Kind of what was your thought?
I took it with a grain of salt. I was like,
Nice.
People are just, trying to support me, say, Dad, we love your stuff. You should sell it. And my neighbors would say the same thing. I just love what I do. I love to make good food. And as long as my family is enjoying it or my customers are enjoying it, that's what brings me joy. And I just said, nah. And the reception, when we kicked it off here, I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to go anywhere. Okay, Christmas is right around the corner, and then we'll go get a job, and it'll be all good. Why was I mistaken? The first orders came through, and then the double orders and the triple orders, and people were coming, and I was like, and I'm doing this from a home of it.
Right.
So it was like, oh, no. So I talked to Judy, and I says, well, at our age, because we're not spring chickens, much to your surprise, I know. I said, do we want to pursue this? Should we, move forward? And she was like, whatever you think, I'm there for you. So I says, okay, well, it's going to be a lot of work. And that's an understatement. So here we are.
And now I say, what was I thinking?
And Omaha and Nebraska have just been, you, Dan, and everybody else have been so supportive. And, people, and you guys, I got to tell you, you guys know food. I can't tell you how many times I have been asked, are you going to use real almond paste in your almond croissants? And I was like, wow, people actually know the difference. I'm really surprised. You guys know food, good food, and your support, the support that everybody has shown us coming into the shop. Saturday, we sold out, an hour and a half, less than 2 hours. We were sold out round one. And I was just blown away. And I can't thank everybody enough for the support. Thank you.
Well, I mean, your product speaks for itself. There's a reason that there's a line out the door, because it's so good. I want to take a quick step back and just kind of examine the realities of being a cottage baker. And, you mentioned this a little bit earlier. I can't remember if it was the Queen of Mon or croissants, but you said basically like once you get in a shop and you get machines, a 6-hour process gets whittled down to 20. But just kind of pull back the curtain on what being a cottage baker is like. I mean, when you're baking in a kitchen and you've got a home oven and you've just got, your island or one counter, and you're the one who's rolling out everything instead of having machines, like, just let people know what that's like and why they can't order from a home baker. Just say, I want 8 loaves of bread tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, you can, but you got to be up at, the middle of the night to do it. And hence the reason that when we opened up the cottage bakery, we said, okay, we have to be realistic. We don't want to be getting up at midnight or not going to sleep at all and doing this, and you have the limitations of the kitchen itself, right? So people couldn't order anything before, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 10 o'clock or something to that effect. And for anybody who thinks that you could okay, I'm a professional baker. You cannot start a croissant in the morning or start making a croissant in the morning and expect to have it by the afternoon. It just doesn't happen that way, because you can make the dough, but the dough has to rise. It has to develop that flavor. And that doesn't happen in hours. It happens in days. So you can't do it from one day or in one day, and it takes a number of days. And then you factor in the labor factor of having to manually roll out, and you have to do it 3 different times to a thickness of millimeters as opposed to inches, and which is really, really thin, because it has to come out perfectly, or else you don't get that honeycomb interior in the croissant. So it's a lot of work. So you have to know your limitations in terms of, okay, how much can I physically produce and how long does it take me to physically produce that quantity? I mentioned earlier that I was able to do 10 or 11 croissants. That was the size of the batch. Couldn't squeeze out that extra croissant out of there to make an even dozen. And even that, it takes 6 hours to produce that 10 croissants
Wow.
for the order
6 hours for 10 croissants.
of labor. Yeah.
Oh, I'm very glad that you have machines to fill out a little bit out.
Well, and one of the things that we like about having the shop also is that people can go in and buy one of something. Whereas in the cottage bakery, we had to put it on the website. You know, you want bread, you have the minimum of 2 because it would make 3 loaves.
Right.
So we ate 1, we sold 2.
Right. And so, yeah, we couldn't sell 1 croissant. It would have to be in half dozen increments.
Yeah.
We started off by making tarts, but lo and behold, we found out very quickly anything that has to be refrigerated, a cottage bakery can't sell. So we had to take that off the menu. So we just stuck to the pastries and the bread. So, yeah.
So you guys started selling goods out of your home in November, and then it was on April 5th you put out a Facebook post announcing that you'd be taking a short break as you moved into your new space. Like we talked about, that was a former bakery, but a different kind of bakery. What did you have to do to transform that space from a cupcake bakery into what you needed to produce your goods?
A ton of dough. No, we needed specialized equipment.
I like a good pun.
Yeah. We needed specialized equipment and proofers for the bread and the pastries. And what a proofer is basically climatized cabinet that is not only temperature but humidity. So you get the proper rise. The ovens were there. The flat pans were already there. The counters were there. They had a walk-in freezer, which was great for us. You know, several refrigerators. So, yeah.
Yeah, the front counter display, all of that. It really was a turnkey operation, but we had to, for example, the ovens, which were already in place, weren't really set up for bread baking because it needs a certain amount of moisture. So we had to have a plumber come in and check that out. We had to have electricians come in, and between the two working together as a team, they were able to now do steam injection into those older ovens until we were able to buy new ovens. So now we use all the ovens. It's, you know, and then just kind of like when you move into a new home and first time you're in the kitchen, it's like, I don't know if the spoons really work on this side, and you move them to another place. And so that kind of thing has to happen. You have to figure out what the flow is going to be like.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm so curious how you guys like redetermined your processes, because we've talked about, you know, how different it is. Now you can all of a sudden, instead of making 10 or 11 croissants, you know, you can make, I don't even know how many you can make a day in the bakery. 50.
50 at a whack.
50 at a whack. But I mean, you have to figure out a whole new process for that. You got to figure out how these machines work. You got to figure out, okay, what's our oven schedule? I mean, there's a lot that goes from scaling up from something pretty small to offering an entire pastry counter worth of desserts and pastries. How did you figure all that out?
The recipes are all scalable. So I know that you know, a block of 84% butter for laminating is, you know, it's 2 kilos. It's 4 pounds of butter. Oh, no, it's 1 kilo. Sorry. It's 2.2 pounds of butter. So I scaled my recipes for the dough to match so I wasn't having to make smaller portions. So I just scaled them accordingly, to based on what the requirement was or is in terms of croissants and pain au chocolat. I know that the butter is this size, so I need so much dough. The bread was all scaled based on how many we wanted to produce, and we had 2 or 3 weeks of test runs. At one point I made 40 loaves of bread, and we gave them all away to see how the ovens were working out. And then we had the nightmare of with our laminator that we bought from a company that produces companies in France. And the laminator was coming, and 3 weeks before, laminator is coming, it'll be there next week. And 2 weeks before, the laminator, the ship broke down crossing the Atlantic, and you won't have your laminator. And then it's like, that's the cornerstone of what we do, right? Of laminated dough. So we had to scramble, and we were very, very fortunate that we found a company on the East Coast, actually, out on Long Island, Empire Bakery Equipment. They had one in stock and could get it to us in a couple of days, and we got the machine in and got it working. And then it was trial and error on working with a machine you've never even laid eyes on before. So it's all good. A lot of fun.
So you guys opened the shop to the public on May 30th, 2023. Now,
Yes, sir.
You spent years baking goods in your home. You've even, had some time at this point selling them. But actually opening a shop and like having a storefront and seeing customers and everything, that's a whole different animal. What were your emotions and nerves like the night before?
I wasn't sure if I was ready, but, having experienced the hospitality in this state, which still floors me. People are just so great, so over the top, so kind. I was like, okay, people will be patient with me. I think they'll understand, and lo and behold, yes, they were. And it was really good. A little concerning initially, and you're thinking, well, is anybody going to know we're here? Will we sell anything? How long is it going to take till we really get sales numbers? And it happened relatively quickly as the word got out. We already had a following from the cottage bakery. And so word had gotten out over Facebook, and folks were just waiting for us to open. So that was exciting. We just, we wanted to get a certain look in the place, and he left that to me. He said, I don't do decoration.
I'm operations. She's administration. I don't delve into that area.
But I wanted it to be something where people can feel, really comfortable, that it's a warm feeling, and just a place where if you want to get your pastry and sit down and have a cup of coffee and just decompress, you can. So, we've been able to do that. And adding the POW MIA table, that was really cool.
Tell me about that a little bit for someone who hasn't been in yet.
All right, absolutely. So Aires definitely wanted. We've experienced such a table at other places, at Marine Corps Ball and different places, and most recently at the VA hospital here. But basically, it's a table for one, and it's the POW, prisoners of war, and MIA, missing in action. So it's just really to remember those who have been prisoners of war and still are prisoners of war in some cases, and the missing in action, those who just never came home, and could be any war, nothing recent, back to whenever, and just to remember those people. And each element on the table has certain symbolization. So we have a placard on the table that explains all the different elements. For example, the lemons that's sitting on the small, the plate, the dinner plate, are supposed to represent the bitterness of what they have been through. And then the salt is a salt shaker, which is the tears of the family members, for those who never come home. So we were really happy to put that there. We've had people walk through and actually, pass by, take their hat off, give a salute, so we know that it means something to many people. So we're happy to have it.
Very cool. Now you guys talked about you had a little bit of a following, maybe more than a little bit, from selling goods out of your home, but you still, there's still kind of that question of, are people gonna know that we're a shop now? Do they know that we're open? Like, what was the initial response like? And did it surprise you guys? Were you expecting it? What do you remember about those first days and weeks?
Well, the first couple of days, we had a pre-opening. We had a soft opening, and we invited a whole bunch of people out. And I was afraid. I was like, oh my gosh, what did I get us into here? Because there are some outstanding bakeries in Omaha. And I'm like, wow, can I compete with these guys? And it's not even about competing with them, because I think we're a niche bakery. I don't want to be like anybody else, and I'm not trying to be like anybody else. We do our own thing, but it was it was scary, because the first Monday, we baked all this stuff, and we don't keep anything over. So, and I come from a family where you don't throw food out, okay? But we had all of this stuff that we threw out. And that's the heartbreaking piece. When we don't sell anything, there's only so much bread that Judy and I and Matthew can eat. And if we could find an organization or anybody. So I put that out there, but I digress. So fright. I was frightened. And the first day it was like, oh my gosh, we got to throw all this stuff away. And then the second day, a couple of people came in, and we're like, okay, maybe it'll get better. People are on vacation. And as the week progressed, Thursday improved. Friday was nice, and Saturday was great. And we had we're in our 7th week, if I'm not mistaken. We had
That's crazy.
Yeah. Last Monday was our first Monday selling out. And so we went through the week. Today is Monday, and this is red letter day, number 2. So we sold out today as well. The good thing is, okay, it's a business, right? It's about making money, but I don't like to be wasteful. So throwing stuff out is not it's difficult for me. So yeah, we don't have to throw anything out. Thank God. Knock wood.
And we've been, having to test the waters. All right, well, we made too much, so now let's scale back. We'll make less so we don't have that much waste. And then people come in and say, well, do you have no more of this item or that item? And no, we sold out of that. Oh, okay. So they'd buy other things, And so we're like, okay, well, let's scale that back up, because that seems to be the thing that sells out. And then it wouldn't sell, We just didn't know what to do. We said, all right, we'll just have to see how this flows.
So we talked about this a little bit off the mics, but I want to let listeners into the inside. We're recording this on Monday, July 24th. July 22nd was a mad day for you guys. There was a news story that came out about the bakery the day before, correct?
Yes.
And then Saturday was the day where everything just went haywire. Just tell me about that day and how you guys survived it.
Well, I had the easy part. I didn't have to deal with customers. I was just in the back. So I'm going to give this over to Judy, because she is the one who went through the ordeal of dealing with all of those folks that came in.
Well, it actually started Friday afternoon, or maybe midday after the news story had aired. People were coming into the shop and saying, we just saw you on the news. We just saw you on the news. We've never been here. And, people were coming from far, like an hour's drive in some cases.
Wow.
Because they'd just seen it on the news. And I felt awful, because we had run out of product. People were just buying, because they lived far away. and we would tell people, will that keep? They'd say, well, we have no preservatives in anything, but it will freeze well, in the case of breads and that sort of thing. And so, then Saturday, we said, well, we're open tomorrow, but we don't open till 8 o'clock. Saturday, there were about 8 cars in the parking lot from about 7:40, 7:45, waiting for us to open.
Oh, boy.
And when we opened, they quickly made a line inside, and then everybody else just followed, and it was nonstop. And until we sold out in an hour and 20 minutes, I believe it was.
Yeah. And we, as Judy had mentioned, we were in there quite late in anticipation of Saturday being heavy traffic, as Saturday typically is. So we put out 4 times the amount that we would normally put out on any given day. So we said, this stuff, it'll be good. We'll be good all day. An hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes, whatever it was. And I said, okay, well, we got to scramble, but the only thing I can do is I can make more, but I just need time. So we opened up at 8, an hour and a half, so that was 9:30. And I says, okay, I can do it in 2.5 hours. So if you give me till 11:30, I can put out more. And so we said, okay, then put it out there to everybody. Come back at 11:30, we'll have round 2. And at 11:25, people were lined up outside the door. I was like, Jiminy Crickets. It was chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So we put everything out that we had, and everything went out.
All right. And then I decided to come in on Sunday because now we had nothing.
Now we had
from
nothing
Oh,
for Monday.
yeah.
So Sunday's usually our close day, where it's like, okay, we're going to rest because we work 12-hour days. So, he worked on Sunday to be ready for today.
I can't imagine how stressful that is and just how tired you are, honestly. But
I sleep well.
good. But it kind of goes back to what you said at the very beginning of the podcast. You said you do this because you love to see people be happy when they eat your food.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure seeing a line out the door is part of you is just like anxiety just shooting up. But part of you is also like, whoa, all those people are here for our food. That's crazy.
The reviews, your review, there was a gentleman, Zach, who's a chef by trade. He came in, and one day we were speaking, and I gave him, he tried some of the items, and I saw his eyes, and he was like, his eyes just lit up, and he said, this is wonderful. And I was blown away. I was like, and then he bought stuff, and he reviewed me or reviewed the shop on Facebook, and I was like, guffaw. I was like, wow, dude. Not like patting myself on the back. I was like, wow, people actually like my stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just very humbling. So, and I can't tell you how pleased I am that everybody enjoys what they're having. It just, it just adds to, it makes it worthwhile to know that people are enjoying what we produce.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
As we're wrapping up here, I mean, this might seem like a crazy question considering you guys have been open for 7 weeks. So it's hard to, like, you're so new. It's hard to think about the future when you're like smack dab in the middle of the present. But as you look forward and you think about what, how far Reis's Bakery has come in 7-8 months, like, do you allow yourself to think about the future? And if you do, what do you see?
We are literally, Omaha is literally tasting the tip of the proverbial iceberg. There is so much more.
Oh, you are exciting me right now.
Oh my gosh. However, but there's always a but. I can't do it with the number of people that we have. Staff is, it's just Matt and I who are baking. Judy's got the front counter and all of the everything that goes along with it, and the administration and of it. So if we can get some people in there And it doesn't. You don't have to have skills. You don't have to be a baker. You have to have the love for food.
Good and open mind.
That's it. And we'll train you and teach you what DDT is and how to figure that out and all that good stuff, so that we could bring more of this homemade goodness, which is our slogan.
That's right.
Our slogan. Homemade goodness to Omaha.
Yeah. I see a little bit interesting kind of future. I kind of see it expanding because I just want to have more places to sit. I want people to just come, sit, and hang out and just enjoy a good time.
Well, I love it. Our time is getting short here, but I could talk to you guys for hours. You are fascinating. You have a great story, and your product speaks for itself. I mean, seriously, people, I don't even need to give you a testimonial. Like, you've heard them talk about it. You can hear the way that they care about this. You've seen the response. It's happening. People are recognizing it. So if you haven't had Reis's Bakery, stop in. Maybe go on not a Saturday. Give these guys a little bit of a break. But honestly, it's so good. Aires and Judy, thank you so much for you talked about how busy you are. You took an hour of time to come on this podcast. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Our pleasure.
Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.